Shalom, all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushua, Ba'ashem, Al-Rakah, Quadash. Double honors unto the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well, and shalom to the whole full elect. This is Paya, I love the James London camp, and this is news and prophecy, prophecy and news, in the year of prophecy. I have an article here from the Telegraph, which is how it reads: France gears up for war with European neighbours if locked out of British waters by a no-deal Brexit. Okay, and as you know, this is news and prophecy, prophecy and news. So this is prophetic goings on within the news, all right? It's the prophecy of the 10 toes, part being iron and part being clay, and how as iron and clay doesn't mix, so won't these nations mix, all right? And these are both iron toes in iron and clay toes, all right? These are two nations of strength, basically, France and England, all right? That they'll want to fight if they're locked out of these waters, okay? So I'm going to delve into this article. It says Dutch and Belgian trawlers are thought to be eyeing up French waters already, okay? So it says the French fear clashes with the European neighbours after no-deal Brexit. So, oh my days. I had the whole article a second ago. Give me one moment. So I read this article. Alright, so this is from the Express.co.uk. EU Civil War. Okay, on the same note, no-deal Brexit could spark French versus Dutch fishing clashes. So it says, leaving the EU with no trade deal risks sparking a fishing dispute between France and other European countries, experts have warned. Alright, so it says, France has already threatened to reject Brexit negotiations over fishing rights this week. Fishing remains one of the main sticking points at the trade talks between the EU and UK are continuing to go down the wire. So it says Oliver Le Prétre, head of the House de France Fishing Council, worries about the French would be swamped by European rivals if the UK rejects them. Okay, so basically the English Channel basically is prime location in terms of waters for fishing, all right? And basically a war could erupt because the UK has deployed their navy into the English Channel to basically secure, act upon what was said in terms of keeping it a secure place for the fishermen in the UK to basically fish in the area and to keep out those of the EU. And in doing so, now it's going to create a vacuum of a power grab, or, more of everyone's going to more or less go to waters which they're entitled to go to, being France, all right, since they're all part of the same union, all right? But then in doing so, it's going to stir up some tensions because ultimately France don't want them up in their waters because they want to deal with them waters themselves, all right? So it really shows you that, part being iron and clay, how that they will not get along is really coming to effect, all right? And the Brexit is kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back, that basically had a domino effect with everything, man. So it says he told the Sunday Telegraph, if it was only French fishermen in French waters, then no deal might be okay. But we have Belgians, the Dutch to contend with. All right? If they all end up in French waters, there's a risk of overfishing, and in a few months will annihilate stocks. He went on to claim that the Dutch were the villains of the story. He added this is a nation that is exterminating fishing. They have brought the European fleet. They fish to excess. We all know full well that if we exterminate the fish, they won't come back ever again. All right? So, and that's really where it is. And that really shows you the laws of the Heavenly Father. All right? That you can't overdo it with anything, man. But reading on, it says the Ministry of Defense confirmed this week that 418 says the Ministry of Defense confirmed this week that 4 18-meter armed vessels are on standby to guard British waters from European fishing boats if there is no new post-Brexit deal on fishing rights. Alright, so they're going to establish themselves through means of warfare, showing force. In response to the news, an LSE official told Reuters on Saturday, "Keep calm and carry on." You know, that's a real British, it says it referencing the British wartime slogan. Alright, negotiations over the trade deal are expected to end on Sunday as both sides have acknowledged that a no-deal scenario is now likely. And that's really going to have a snowball effect for the whole of the EU and everything that goes on after that. Alright, because they're going to have to hash out many other things after that goes down. Alright, this is the tip of the iceberg, basically. Dmitry Rogov, president of Regional Normandy Fishing Committee, also claimed that the Dutch pose a problem to France. He told the Telegraph they practice what I would call a scorched earth policy. When there is nothing left, they look elsewhere. All right? So, yeah, that's what it means. We saw it with electric fishing. They cannot sit with our fishermen who fish locally and don't look elsewhere for nothing when nothing's left. He added at the moment they fish all over the channel in French and English waters. But he warned, and see, that's how they're you know, everyone has a benefit within the EU. Everyone benefits from the other in some shape or fashion, you know, by their own means. But he warned that as the Brexit transition period comes to an end with no certainty of a fishing agreement, there could be a build-up against these giants on the French side because the English won't let them in anymore. It comes after fishermen in Fécamp, France, protested with NGOs over 8 massive, mainly Dutch-owned vessels which are fishing 26 miles off the coast. Mr. Rogov told the Telegraph there is strong lobbying by the Dutch towards France, which doesn't want to fall out with their allies over Brexit, right? Representatives from the French fishing industry reportedly do not want to enter into a situation similar to the UK, where a large portion of their quota is in the hands of other countries. Okay. According to BBC research, about 160 million pounds worth of England's fishing quota is in the hands of vessels owned by the companies based in the Netherlands. All right, so they're fishing a lot of their wealth out of their waters, basically. And I do remember going back to, 2016 or so, when the Brexit was voted. I remember that the fishermen were adamant about making the Brexit happen because they would benefit from it the most. And as you can see by the numbers, that's why. So it says owned by companies based in the Netherlands, Spain, and Iceland. Mr. Rogov added the Dutch fleet relocated to Britain some time ago. As we have seen lots of big Dutch-owned seine boats with UK flags in recent years, right? So they're false flagging. Now that they have started operating boats with German flags, for the likes of which have not been seen in the channel since since the Second World War. Mr. Lee Preet added the British fishermen told about reclaiming their waters, and yet their government has allowed its fishing industry to be sold off. I don't get. So basically, they're saying that, after the Brexit, more or less the problem's still gonna be there, because a lot of the fishing industry is actually being sold onto different parts of the different companies. Basically, trade talks were reportedly continuing through the night on Saturday evening as the UK and EU battle to agree on a post-Brexit deal. All right. So basically, that's what's going on. So what you can take from that is the fact that basically that's a recipe for disaster. Okay, as you can see, Brexit is part of the 10 toes, part iron and part clay. All right, how they wouldn't basically work together, falling apart. So that's the main thing. The first thing is the UK wants to not be part of that. They want to break away. But then in doing so, it has a chain reaction, because part of what they've brought to the table, other nations benefit from that. And where they can find no deal, because obviously the British want to have their cake and eat it, where they can't do so, now it's going to have a knock-on effect to these other countries that basically benefit from the UK. But one of the main things the UK stands to gain from the Brexit is access, them being the only ones that have access to their own waters, all right? But then, as it was said, most of the fishing industry in the English Channel was sold by the English government onto various countries, okay? So basically, you can see it's a mess, a recipe for destruction. And the main reason why you can see that is because they're ready to deploy the Navy into the English Channel to basically establish that ownership of that refound ownership of the English Channel, okay? So it's showing you, all right? So I'm going to read this. This is the book of Matthew 3:24. It says, "And if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And if Satan rise up against himself and be divided, he cannot stand, but have an end. No man can enter into a strong man's house and spoil his goods, except he will first bind the strong man, and then he will spoil his house." And this happened back in the time of the Dark Ages, all right? Because Jake was wiped out by the means. The main thing that killed Jake was the Black Death, all right, where it killed 2/3 of our people. Where it was a great span in the works of our rulership, right? Great weakening blow to allow another people to come in, all right? But then now the same thing is happening in this day and age, dealing with this kingdom, all right? The end is in sight, because the Lord is basically, bringing them to an end by themselves. They're falling in on themselves, imploding on themselves. But then Yahushua is going to come and basically bring things to an end ultimately. All right. So now it's the book of Daniel's the 2nd chapter. And I'm going to read from verse 40. And it says, "And the 4th kingdom shall be as strong as iron. For as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise." All right? And that's basically talking about a Greco-Roman Empire. All right? They basically, by way of the use of the sword, as it tells you in the book of 2nd Maccabees, the 8th chapter, right, verse 1 to 4, but the point being in verse 4, it says that through policy, I believe it said through the sword and policy, if my memory serves me correct. Basically, the Rome was established. Okay, so it was by way of their establishing policy, making laws, and by way of the sword. And they basically utilized the sword in a fashion that they adopted from the Greeks, really being us, going back to uh, the Lacedaemonians, all right, with the phalanx, all right, which basically was a great technique that allowed them to subdue many nations about them, all right. So that's why it says, and the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. All right, and this was the biggest kingdom out of all of these kingdoms that was mentioned aforetime, but it wasn't, the splendor wasn't as great as the first, being that of Babylon. So as the metal becomes more inferior in terms of quality or worth, it becomes more superior in density, okay, and more powerful, and it bears more land, basically. So it says, reading on, it says, and that iron that breaketh all these shall it break in pieces and bruise. All right, and the Romans, the Greco-Roman Empire, did break in pieces and bruise. They basically set up for the old world, all right, us over here on this side of the world. They set up all the trade routes, all right. They go back to Rome, all right, and that's why you have the saying, all roads lead to Rome, okay, because basically all those roads that was established came from Rome, conquered those lands, and then took their substance back to Rome, all right. So it says, and whereas thou sayest, whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, put part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. Right? So basically, this is an extension of that kingdom. Because remember, and basically another way to look at it is it's the beast in the book of Revelations, the 13th chapter, who had their wound on their head but was healed, right? That they should, be loose for a little season, right? But now when it's loose for a little season, it isn't even though it technically is to that great splendor, it isn't, because it's a shadow of where it was before. That's why it says, but there shall be in it the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. And it says, and as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And that's talking about the EU, okay? Because the part strong, actually I'll establish who the part strong is by telling you who the part weak is, all right? The pigs, Portugal, Ireland, Italy, Greece, Spain, those nations basically are the weaker nations of the weaker of the weaker four, PIIGS. So the weaker 5 out of the 10, all right, and the others are the more strong, like the UK, all right, like Germany, like France. So reading on, it says, and whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves together to themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. And that's what you see happening now with Brexit and all these rumblings of war. All right? So with that, I pray you will edify.